So, all right. So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for waiting. I know a lot of you logged in a little earlier, so if you'd heard our commentary, I hope you don't mind. But we're so happy to have you all joining us tonight. My name is Danielle Pagani. I am the Infectious Disease Preparedness Generalist for the Village of Ridgewood Health Department. I'm also part of the Stigma-Free Task Force, and I'm also joined tonight by my colleague.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Surbi Kapadia. I am the Local Health Outreach Coordinator here at the Ridgewood Health Department.
So to give you just a quick little background, the Village of Ridgewood Stigma-Free Task Force was actually established in 2016 by Dawn Citrullo, who is the health officer here for the Village of Ridgewood, as well as Rosemary Klee and other community members. If you are interested in joining our committee or have questions, you can definitely always reach out to us here at the health department. We're always open to new members, new ideas. That's kind of how Gabrielle Milani and I met. She's part of our committee, and we're so happy to have the Lucan Center for Psychotherapy here tonight, presenting on how to have a healthy holiday. Some of the topics that will be discussed include, loss of a loved one, eating challenges, family dynamics. And we have the following clinicians joining us from the Lucan Center tonight. We have Dr. Constantine Lucan, Gabrielle Ferreira, Jessica Colucci, and Jeffrey Hillback. And to give you a little background about the Lucan Center, they provide high quality evidence-based psychotherapy services to Ridgewood, Hoboken, Montclair, Englewood, Westfield, and Jersey City communities. They are one of the largest psychotherapy practices in northern New Jersey. They provide a wide array of services targeting adult mental health and have a child and adolescents program that's uniquely designed to the needs and requirements of children and teens. And, of course, they're here tonight. Feel free to ask any questions, and I'm sure they'll share their contact information. We'll put their website in the chat. But, if you have anything, definitely feel free to ask. And also just a reminder, tonight's presentation is going to be recorded. So we'll, have it on our Facebook. We're going to make a YouTube video, but if you have any questions at the end of the presentation, definitely stick around. There's the chat box or comment Q&A box. If for whatever reason that we don't get to your question, don't hesitate to call us or call the Lucan Center. We'll definitely, get your question answered somehow, some way. But besides all that, I'm going to definitely pass it over now to the Lucan Center. Thank you.
Awesome. Gabby, I think you're moving us along, right?
Yep. Yeah. So, I'll move us along. So as was already said, we're Jessica, Gabrielle, and Jeffrey, and these are some topics that we'll be discussing tonight. And I'm going to pass it over to Jessica.
Awesome. Thank you, Gab. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica Colucci. I'm a licensed professional counselor here at the Lucan Center. And I'm going to be focusing on the topic of family dynamics in terms of having a healthy holiday. So a lot of times holidays bring up a lot of stress for us because sometimes we can be anticipating a lot of maybe dysfunctional or unhealthy relationships with maybe our close family members or even our extended family members. And so I wanted to dive into a little bit of what these definitions mean in terms of a functional family versus a dysfunctional family. So what is a functional family? So a functional family definition would be striving to create an environment in which everybody feels safe and respected. So this can be looking like everybody is able to communicate effectively with one another. They're able to share their thoughts, their feelings at a dinner table, sitting around during the holidays. Everybody feels like they can be heard and they can also express themselves in the right way. So it's not always going to be perfect, and sometimes it might look loud and sometimes it might be silly, but generally what we're looking for overarchingly would be that this environment feels safe for everybody and that, we can really feel like nobody's necessarily getting up, walking away, feeling disturbed by the things that might be being shared around the dinner table. So on the opposite side of that, what is a dysfunctional family? It might look like family quarrels, estrangements, grudges, criticism, and we might have a lack of unity, empathy, and boundaries. So a lot of times the reason that holidays are so stressful for people is because these are the types of things that they're anticipating when they are getting together with their, with their families. And maybe it's even, like I said, that extended family, maybe it's partners of an extended family member, or it could be even maybe in-laws of an extended family member, because families tend to reach out during holidays and want to have people come together and have that closeness, but we might not always get along. And so a lot of times these types of dynamics really show themselves during the holidays. So we want to talk about what those dynamics are in some ways that might be able to help you kind of cope through them. So I do have a little video. I don't know if anybody has ever seen the movie The Family Stone, but it's a really good depiction of what a dysfunctional family might look like during the holidays. So it's embedded in here, Gab. So I think you might be able to just click on it.
I just don't think that any parent would hope.
Hold on one second. It's not playing straight from the slide. Hold on.
No problem.
Let me
Sorry, giving you some difficulty.
stop and come back.
Hope for a child to be challenged like that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear a word you said.
Sorry, this isn't coming out right. All I'm trying to say is that what I mean to say is life is hard enough as it is, and it just seems to me that you wouldn't want to make it any more difficult for your child. I mean, Patrick, you must understand what I'm trying to say, right?
What did you say? Oh, well now, boss. I think we have been hit twice.
No, I'm sorry. I did not mean that. Honestly,
Why don't you try saying what it is you do mean?
Everett.
All right, that's enough.
I'm sorry.
Well, that's enough.
I just think any parent would want a normal child.
Oh! God damn you, okay?
Sybil.
Don't Sybil me.
Just for the child's sake, just to make it easier for the child.
That's enough! That's enough. Dad. It's too much, Everett. It's enough.
Excuse me.
Meredith.
Thanks a lot.
I know how she can seem. Hey. Hey, you. And you are more normal than any other asshole sitting at this table.
So I don't know about you guys, even just watching that clip and the range of emotions that you might feel. And the reason that I chose this clip is because it shows an outsider per se coming into this family. She's the girlfriend of one of the sons in the family, and she kind of creates a stir in some of the topics that she was bringing up during the dinner. And I thought it was a helpful way even to look at how the whole family kind of reacted in sticking up for the one brother, and how the parents were kind of stepping in to try and stop and shut her down. And then there was the dynamics between she and her partner. There's just kind of a lot happening all at once. And it couldn't, it definitely can portray that, not that this is going to necessarily be happening, that people are getting up from the table or slamming or throwing knives at plates just to communicate. but that, there definitely can be some dysfunction possibly, and that it can feel really uncomfortable and feel really sad, and that there also can be a lot of love being shared at the table as well. So I just thought it was a really good depiction. So if anybody has ever seen the movie or wants to watch it, it's called The Family Stone, and it does a really good job. There's many scenes to choose from in terms of dysfunction and then even function and how they come together as a family at the end. Okay, so family dynamics and setting yourself up for success. So really what we want to be looking for here is, what are ways that you can kind of prepare if you are already knowing that you're going into a family dynamic that might not be the best situation. So the first thing we have here is setting your realistic expectations. So we want to break these expectations down. We want to make them feel attainable, because if our expectations we're going in are too high, then we're going to be constantly being let down, especially when we know there's a cycle or a pattern of behavior from certain family members. So although it can be really, really hard, setting our expectations low and being able to kind of have those lower bars met maybe can feel a little bit better that we might be achieving those goals. So the second is focusing on the gratitude of the holiday. So being able to identify at least one positive thing about each family member, or maybe identifying what you feel thankful for. I know we generally save that for Thanksgiving, but I do feel around other holidays, we can always be focusing on our gratitude and being able to consciously think about, what am I grateful for when I'm getting together with my family? What are the things that I'm positively looking forward to? And then we have differentiating ourselves. This is a big piece here, because a lot of times people feel stuck that if this is my family, then this must be who I am. And it's okay to differentiate ourselves and say, this is not me. I can be different than this uncle or aunt who has these different political views than me, or I can be different than my mom or dad, even if I don't agree with them entirely. And it doesn't mean that we have to necessarily engage with those conversations if they do come up, but we can just recognize, hear what they have to say, try to keep ourselves as calm as possible, and just recognize with some positive self-talk of, I am not them, I am different, and that's okay. Another option would be planning ahead. So if we are thinking about what might come up, so when we think a lot about our anxieties in terms of holidays and what anxiety tends to tell us, it tells us a what if thought. What if these conversations come up? And we tend to get ourselves really riled up with that type of thinking. So we can plan in terms of saying, even if these conversations come up, what can my response be? What can my reaction be? How might I handle that? So you can do a little bit of what we call stress inoculation and work yourself through it a bit. And you don't have to spend too much time on this, because we definitely don't want it to create a negative feedback loop in terms of anxiety. But maybe if you set 10 minutes aside and think, okay, what might be some conversations or topics that might come up, and how might I respond to those? And then we have reflect. So reflecting back on what it was like when you're getting in the door, or when you're getting in the car, or walking through the door of your own home, or if you're hosting and people are leaving, give yourself some time to take some deep breaths, to reflect, and really kind of work through if there was anything that was brought up and you're kind of thinking about it for yourself, just really process it for yourself. Maybe set that 5 or 10 minutes aside at the end of the night if you can. And then we want to find a way to laugh. So if it is possible, and if, I know sometimes jokes might not land for you, and that might be the cause of contention for you with somebody, but sometimes there can just be plain silliness. So instead of always maybe looking for a joke to maybe land in a way that's more uncomfortable, opening up the ability to maybe see if it's a possibility for you to laugh at the joke, if it's not being, if it's not at anybody's expense or it's offensive, because oftentimes with family members who maybe say things in an untasteful way, we're looking for them to always do it, so it always seems negative. So trying to just open our minds up a bit that it could possibly be some humor in something, and just allowing yourself to laugh when there also are just easy, laughable situations. And then when in doubt, we have watch a movie. And there is a reason that holiday movies show dysfunctional families. If you guys go through the list, I could probably give you 20. And just, the example of The Family Stone that I shared tonight, there are just so many movies, and there's just a reason, because it's really normalized that this is a really tough time of year sometimes for people. And sometimes those movies can be straight up silly. Sometimes they can be, way off the rails or really over dramatic. But they're really there to normalize some experiences of what people tend to experience during this time of year. And the last piece I have here for you guys on family dynamics is that communication is key. So we really want to be able to open up the conversation if it's possible. So of course, if you're not feeling safe for the conversation or you feel like it's really just inappropriate to keep things going in a certain way, you can always take that step outside and take a break. Head to the bathroom, a private space, try to stay cool, and then come back and discuss if and when you feel ready for that conversation. And within that also, we can talk about being able to ask for clarification and apologizing on your end if needed. You know, sometimes we definitely have reactions because we have knee-jerk reactions to things that people say, and kind of going back to what I was saying before, where sometimes we're just anticipating somebody to say the wrong thing. We tend to react on that a little bit quicker. So just really taking a pause to digest maybe what a person might be saying, asking for clarification, sometimes giving them an opposite reaction of what they might be anticipating. A lot of times people who are provoking at a dinner table might expect you to respond in a certain way. And if you give that opposite reaction or emotion, you might really throw them off and they might not keep picking at something that they were trying to do in the first place. And then we have a mantra or a song ready to go. I say this meaning a lot of times we can have maybe a phrase for ourselves or just a happy song that you know, if and when you need to kind of sit at the table and cope, if you can't get away, or you already took that break and you're trying to sit at the table and you're eating or whatever the case may be, having something that you can tell yourself repetitively that you know will keep your body calm, keep your mind calm, and it's also a little bit of a distraction if there's a conversation that you really don't want to be paying attention to. And then we have willingness to discuss hard topics that will go a long way. When we think about reflecting, you know, that is your opportunity after the night to maybe go back and say, okay, there were these things that didn't necessarily sit well with me. And then going into maybe the next day or the next couple of days when you really processed it, having that hard conversation with a family member might not always be appropriate, but sometimes it may be if you reach out and say, hey, I really thought about what you said on Christmas and it just didn't stick well with me. And I'd like to have a conversation because I really would like to prevent this from happening in the future so that we can get along a little bit better at the next holiday. So really being able to dive into those topics, again, not always appropriate. Our relationships look different with different people, but if you are willing to have those tough conversations, it might make it a little bit easier, a little bit stressful for the less stressful rather for the next year. So that is it, what I have for you guys on family dynamics.
All right, thanks, Jessica. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jeffrey Hillback. I'm a licensed clinical social worker with the Lucan Center. I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about coping with grief during the holidays. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about tuning into accepting and feeling the emotions that you feel, right? Trying to run away from them. Generally, it's like trying to keep a cat out of a room, right? They're going to show up. So noticing them, accepting them, it's all right to feel these feelings, right? You can be there with a lot of people, everybody's having a good time. If you're sad, you're sad. And if there has been a loss recently and you find you're somewhere having a good time, that's also all right, right? I think sometimes people feel guilt about having a good time when they've recently been through a loss. And I think, right, important to come back to accepting that any feeling is okay. Right? And then we come to actually feeling our emotions, right? We're trying to push them down. Not experience them usually leads to more trouble, right? I think finding some ways to specifically feel those emotions, and this comes to the next point, right? Being specific, writing out those emotions, right? Sometimes being very clear about them can be very helpful. It's actually my favorite psychological fact is that if you say how you're feeling out loud, that feeling will reduce. It's amazing. So, right, this is like a fantastic way to do it. It's also a nice little tool called a worry window, where you can pick an amount of time, right? 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and I'm going to write about these feelings and really feel these feelings. But then those feelings have had their appointment and they're less likely to just show up, you know, willy-nilly at breakfast or wherever. They've been sort of contained, right? So we're not avoiding, but on your time, not on their time, which I think is also very helpful. So moving on, right, asking for help. And again, being specific. People around you want to be helpful, don't always know what to do. Let them know, right, so that they can do their best to do what they can for you. All right. And then setting holiday boundaries. And this is sort of in conjunction to that communication. How much holiday do you want? That's also completely up to you. Right. And so maybe taking a break from certain things makes the process easier. By all means, take that break. If not, right, if engagement and being active is more helpful, then by all means do that. Again, it's that judgment piece that we want to really minimize. They're all the right thing, right? And it's moving on into honoring old traditions, right? Again, trying to act like the loss hasn't happened is probably not going to work. And so leaning into some of that and really taking a moment to honor that person and that person's importance around the holidays can be really nice, really important. And then there's the piece of sort of creating new traditions, whether it's honoring that person in some way or finding, new activities, new things to do with the family that remains. Right? There are new people, right? People get married, people have children. Things are always going to be changing. So looking forward to and trying to build off of that idea. Planning ahead, right? People oftentimes have traditional roles at the holidays. And so having lost someone during the course of the year, that role comes up, and that can be a little bit of a shock and a surprise if people haven't really thought about it and figured out what they're going to do instead. And so just being able to avoid that sort of that really gut-wrenching moment through just some prior planning, again, to make the days easier. Mm-hmm. All right, and so then, and I can go on and on about coping tools, right? But having some, knowing what they are, having practiced them to some degree, and to be honest, having some sort of reminder to use them. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with who have a very competent set of tools and then forget to use them when they need them. So, right, having a list of things somewhere, put it on the fridge. People, especially during the holidays, see the fridge very often, right? And so having that list there of practice mindfulness, do yoga, reach out to a friend, go for a walk, spend some time outside, pet the dog, right? All of these things, right? And again, that list could go on and on and on, and we could do a full hour just talking about this, but have some idea of things that work for you, right? Jessica talked about a song, right? Having a playlist ready, having songs ready to be able to listen to that bring joy or distraction. Having, again, getting outside, I can't stress, especially as the days are shorter and it's darker and colder and people aren't going outside, getting that time going for a walk, all of these things, just really wonderful ways to cope with some of these feelings. And then I always think it's important with this sort of thing to talk about really trying to do these things in a mindful way, because I know I can take the dog for a walk and think about stuff that makes me sad and come back in a worse place than I was when I left. Or I can take the dog for a walk and think about the trees and the moon and the dog and come back in a much better place. So again, important to try to stay with when we take use these coping tools, that we really try to focus on the engagement with the tool, because it is very easy to wander back into ruminating about what it is that's upsetting us, and then the tool isn't nearly as effective. I always think the shouldn'ts gets very dangerous, right? It shouldn't be like this, or I shouldn't be like this. It's a lot of judgment going on, and I have yet to see that kind of judgment make anybody feel better. What it should be like, that's not necessarily up to us. And coming back to what it is, and then how do I make this better? What can I do about this, right? Again, coming back to coping tools, communication, all the things that we've already talked about. I think it's worth putting out there, staying aware of alcohol intake. It is a depressant. It's going to make sad emotions, more difficult to deal with and more impactful. So really having a good idea of how one wants to manage that and keeping an eye on it, I think always helpful. And then there's reaching out, right? There's volunteering, helping somebody out, right? It's very simple stuff, but again, really proven to that altruism feels good, right? We feel positive about ourselves. We know we're doing something to help somebody else. And again, it's a distraction. Our focus is somewhere else. There's support groups all over the place, right? In person, virtual. And then I think that, something that not many people are really aware of is with sort of the virtual options, there's always a support group, right? Because you'd be up at 2 a.m, but in London, that's the middle of the afternoon or whatever, and people are having a group around something. And with the internet, we can really sort of do this whenever we need to, and I think that's always something worth keeping in mind. And then I think talking to a therapist, especially somebody that has a real understanding of grief, is having that outlet where you don't have to worry about how we feel, and you can put your emotions out there and talk through some of this stuff. I think that can be infinitely helpful as well. So ultimately, I think the most important thing to come back to is the being kind to oneself during all of this, accepting the feelings that you do have, and experiencing them to a degree without really running yourself into the ground, and then finding where are the places, where are the islands, where are the things that I can engage in, and maybe take joy, as well as dealing with one's grief. All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
Great. Thank you, Jeffrey, and thank you, Jessica. I'm going to talk a little bit about eating challenges that might come up during the holiday season. So again, my name is Gabrielle Ferrara. I'm a LCSW at the Lucan Center, and I specialize in working with eating disorders. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the eating challenges that might come up around the holidays. So these are just a few images here that I think will resonate with kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So, I could do a whole separate presentation on intuitive eating, but the Intuitive Eaters Holiday Bill of Rights is a really great image that I like to go back to. I won't read through the whole thing, but essentially it reinforces this idea that, you as a human being have the right to choose what you want to eat, when you want to eat, how much, how little, honor your hunger and fullness cues, really be able to say, I'm listening to my body is telling me I want this. Declining seconds, taking seconds, you have the right to honor your hunger and fullness cues and listen to what your body is saying you'd like to eat. And even if maybe family members or diet culture is getting in the way of some of those natural cues, really just enforcing that you have the right to listen to yourself and listen to your body. And going to I'll read point 7 out loud because I love that one. You have the right to eat pumpkin pie for breakfast. Someone's telling you can't. You have the right to do that around the holidays or any time of the year. And remembering that the guilt is not an ingredient. And I love this quote too, again from the Intuitive Eating book. When we talk about feeling guilty around food, Evelyn Tribole, who's one of the founders of, the proponents of intuitive eating, says, unless you killed the farmer or the chef, there's no reason to, there's no guilt around your food choices. So those are just some quotes that I wanted to mention off the bat. Oops. All right. So when diet culture shows up uninvited to your holiday gathering, to your dinner table, to the party, wherever you might be. So these are some common diet culture phrases we might hear around the holidays. I'm sure you've heard some of these, maybe you've even said some of these, and no shame or judgment if you have, because I think we live in a culture that really normalizes some of these statements. So saying I'm so bad for eating this, I'm so guilty for eating this, this is so bad for me. Those types of statements assign moral value to food, saying foods are good or bad. Maybe someone commenting, you're going to go back for seconds, or that's a pretty big plate that you have there, or, maybe you should put some greens on that plate, kind of those comments about what you're eating or how much or how often, what you have on your plate. The classic, oh, diet starts Monday. I'm going on a diet on Monday. I'm going on a diet in the new year. My New Year's resolution is to lose weight, or, burn off all this extra holiday weight, kind of comments around that. Similarly, having that mindset around compensating for what you eat with exercise. So, saying I'm going to go on an extra run tomorrow. I'm going to go to an extra gym class to burn off, what I'm eating today. Those types of comments. Unfortunately, sometimes even exercise or fitness instructors will make comments like that. I remember I went to a spin class like the morning of Thanksgiving one year, and the instructor said something along the lines of, oh, like push harder so you can, earn that turkey that you're going to eat later, or earn that dessert that you're going to eat later, which is really toxic messaging. That idea that we have to earn our food or deserve it in some way can be really, really, toxic. And finally, this idea of restricting before a big meal. So saying I haven't eaten anything all day to save up for this meal. I know that's common around like Thanksgiving, saying, I'm just not going to eat all morning because I'm saving up for dinner. And this type of messaging or this type of behavior encourages a restriction and binging eating cycle. So just to kind of give you a brief background on what that looks like, when we don't eat all day, or when we restrict for a long period of time, our bodies naturally go into almost like a little bit of a starvation mode. They think that we're starving, and biologically that doesn't feel good. And so when we do, allow ourselves to eat food again, we kind of go into the survival mode where your body is saying, oh my gosh, she hasn't given me food all day. We're starving, and now I'm going to eat as much as I can in as short amount as I can in case I don't get it again soon, or in case I don't, have access to food again soon, because I can't trust that she's going to give me food again. We've been starving all day. I'm going to eat as much as I can, as quickly as I can, to just get back to some sort of homeostasis. So when we engage in that sort of restricting and binging cycle, it can lead to just a vicious cycle of all of these feelings of guilt or anxiety, or just not feeling in control or feeling stable around food and, our meals. All right. So when we have this diet culture messaging, there are some ways to challenge it. There are some ways we can communicate maybe how these things might be affecting us, or if a family member makes a comment at the table or something like that. So reminding the people around us that food has no moral value. Food is literally, it just is. It's food, it's energy. We need it to survive. It's nourishment. It gives our bodies what they need to just be able to function and keep us alive and, keep us going day to day. So to say that food is good or bad, or, even advertisements for some desserts, they'll call it, sinful chocolate cake or something like that. Attributing any sort of that moral value to food is that diet culture messaging, and we can challenge that. We can also stand up for ourselves and stand up for what our bodies are asking for. So if someone says, oh, you're going back for seconds, or you're getting more of that, we can say, yes, I'm getting seconds, I'm getting more food. My body's telling me that I'm still hungry. My body's telling me that it wants more of that. That tasted really good. We're honoring those different types of hunger. So either feeling physically hungry or just really craving more of that thing that tasted really good. That's okay to honor that type of hunger too, of just acknowledging that tasted really good and, I want more of it. And then reinforcing this idea that food and eating and exercise, it doesn't have to be punitive, right? So we don't have to punish ourselves in one way or another for eating a certain amount of food, for eating a certain type of food, for eating, a certain frequency, because, with holidays, it's usually appetizers and the main course and dessert. So it's a lot of food in a short period of time. We don't have to punish ourselves for that, whether it's through dieting or restriction or over exercising. We don't have to, punish ourselves for that. And we can share those messages or that kind of, feedback with other people as well. All right. And just some more reminders about challenging diet culture messaging around the holidays. So reminding ourselves that our bodies know what to do with all the food that we consume. So this includes all foods. Our bodies are evolutionarily have evolved to be able to know what to do with anything that we put into our bodies. So if it's dessert or if it's vegetables, it doesn't matter. Our body is able to say, okay, I know what to do with this. I know how to use it in a way that's, you know, the most effective. I know how to get rid of it. You know, once it's done, it's due diligence. Once it's done what it needs to do, I know how to get rid of it. I know how to process it. I know how to deal with it and make use of it in a way that's helpful to us. So trusting that our bodies know what to do with whatever type of food we put into it. I remember I was listening to a podcast once about how to kind of raise intuitive eaters or raise kids in a way that, you know, employ some of these concepts. And the dietitian that was on the podcast was talking about how she explains to her kids that some foods just do different things than other foods. They do more things, maybe different things. So for example, like if you're comparing a vegetable to ice cream, it's not that ice cream is bad and vegetables are good. It's just vegetables from a scientific perspective, they do more things for our body. They do different things for our body than ice cream does. It doesn't mean ice cream's good or ice cream's bad and vegetables are good. It just means they do different things, and kind of very, very neutral approach to, you know, comparing those two foods and neutralizing, you know, that the comparison. So not saying one is better or worse than the other. They just exist and they do different things, and kind of having that neutral approach. A reminder that we can have holiday foods at any time of the year. I think we forget this sometimes, and we tend to say, oh my gosh, like I'm never going to be able to have this dessert again, or this is only something that, you know, we have at Christmas. And granted, maybe there are some foods that, you know, Aunt Sally only makes on Christmas, and it's like you only get her recipe once a year and that kind of stuff. But in general, we can have a lot of the foods that we eat on the holidays any time of the year. So when we remind ourselves of this, we don't feel that pressure to binge on these foods or to overeat them or to, you know, really stock up on them, because we can say, you know what, I'm going to eat the amount of this food that feels good to me today, knowing that a week or two from now, if I'm craving, you know, pumpkin pie again, I can go get it. I can make it. I can find it somewhere. I don't have to eat the whole pumpkin pie in one sitting just because I don't feel like I'm going to ever get it again, or I'm not going to get it again for another year. So reminding ourselves that we can have holiday foods at any time of the year. We can, you know, listen to those cravings and listen to that kind of taste hunger at any point of the year, and kind of be flexible with those things. And then finally, remembering that making memories or being in the present moment is going to do much more for us in the long term in terms of our mental health and mental well-being than worrying about the food that we're eating or worried about the calories that we're consuming. Kind of going back to a values-based approach of, you know, being here with our family, with our friends, with our loved ones. That's what matters more so than what we're eating or what the, you know, health qualifications are of what we're eating, the nutrients. Those things are not going to matter in the long run. What's going to matter is the memories that we're making or those experiences that we're having around food. And, you know, it's interesting because food gets kind of maybe this negative connotation of, you know, being something that can be really, really challenging and really toxic. And, you know, there's a lot of focus on food. But food is also something that brings us together as human beings. It allows for that connection, you know, sitting around the dinner table, going for ice cream on a summer night with your friends or with your family. You know, food fosters that feeling of connection and that experience of being loved and supported. And it doesn't have to be something that we see as the enemy or something that we see as needing to be controlled. It can just be something that is part of the overall experience of being human and enjoying these memories with people and making these, you know, experiences everything that we want them to be. So that's what I have in terms of eating and diet culture and challenging that messaging around the holidays. And I think that we have some time. Yeah, we have plenty of time for some questions or chat or anything like that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can see, so I can see everyone too. Yeah, we have some time for Q&A. I'm not sure.
I don't see any questions yet in the Q&A. But that was really great, by the way.
I just want to jump in and also say that was like a phenomenal presentation because it talks about so many things that are actually so tied in together. And I think we're all probably feeling it to some extent. So there's some relatability, whether it's from like loss in your family and like missing that person at the table to like, that's true. I only eat pumpkin pie once a year. Like I know that for myself. Like I don't even think about it unless, you know, Thanksgiving. But to that point, like if I wanted more, I can make a pie next week. And then Jessica, that movie, I have not seen that movie in years. And the feelings that came up, I almost wanted to start crying. I was like, I can feel what that whole family is doing right now. And so I just think that was just, it was beautifully done. So thank you all for taking your time to share all of that knowledge with us, because it's lots of takeaways tonight. So thank you.
I have a question. You got those quotes from it was the book Intuitive Eating. How recent did that come out?
So the first edition was in the late 90s, but they've updated it like 4 or 5 times since then. So I think the most recent one was probably a couple of years ago. But it's a really great book. It's actually like a 3-part sort of book. So it's the Intuitive Eating book. I think it's just called the Intuitive Eating. And that's kind of more of like the textbook sort of information. So it really talks about the 10 principles of intuitive eating and goes through the science behind it and some of the research and, you know, the biology of like restricting and binging and all those types of scientific principles. So that's like the main book. But recently they've come out with 2 accompanying books of the workbook and the journal. So the workbook is like, it's more interactive. So I always say the workbook is kind of like a happy medium between the textbook and the journal, because it explains the principles, it explains, you know, the science and stuff, but then there's also an interactive component where you can write in your answers to certain questions and things like that. And then the journal is definitely more just sort of for processing and interactive and things like that. It doesn't have much of the, you know, the science behind it, but it's a really great resource. There's a lot of, you know, expansions upon it. So there's that initial book, but then a lot of dietitians and other people in the field have kind of, you know, run with it and expanded it in certain ways, or, you know, explained it in different ways that have been really effective. There's a new book out about how to raise intuitive eaters. So it's geared towards explaining intuitive eating to children, and even from like when women are pregnant, like it starts from like, you know, from birth, from pregnancy, like how do we kind of foster these principles in really, really young children. So there's been a lot of research coming out about it, and it's really interesting. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I'm very curious for myself. Like
I'll put the link in the chat to like the main website and the main book. And yeah.
I don't know if our chat right now, the way I see it's for hosts and panelists, and then the Q&A is just for the attendees, but we could also maybe
it looks like I could switch it to everyone in the chat.
Okay. Perfect. Like when we post the video, we could perhaps put like a list of resources underneath it, include that. That'd be great. We do have a question. 2 came in. Tips for letting go of lifelong traditions. Joanne just asked that question.
So, I mean, I think there's a few ways to look at that, right? One would be altering it to create something new, and the other would be to even mourn that lifelong tradition, right? Something I come back to with a lot of people is the use of ceremony. We create ceremonies around all kinds of things: graduations, weddings, funerals. But there's a lot of things that don't have a ceremony that are still really hard things. And so creating our own can sometimes be a really useful way to sort of work through that, that loss, right? Whether it is, you know, losing your tradition, you know, losing a pet, just change, right? That nobody's really developed a ceremony for before, we can make up our own. They're still very powerful, very useful, very, very poignant. So that would be sort of my other thought is giving it its moment to say goodbye and doing it in a way that allows for some of that grief. And again, going back to that idea of letting oneself feel that. I don't want to like torture ourselves with it, but we want to feel it and like have that sadness. We cry for a reason. I mean, like it's not just to clean our eye ducts out, right? We're supposed to have that release. It's healthy for us. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And we have another question. Does Lucan Center participate in insurance?
Dr.
Maggie,
Fluke, do you want me to take that or do you want to do it? So we are an out-of-network provider. So what that does mean is that if you do have the out-of-network benefits, Erin, who is our amazing office manager, she'd be able to like walk you through the process of like submitting the super bill. But if you call in, we can also like walk you through what to do. But we do not participate with insurance at this time. And just a second that a lot of people don't know if they have the out-of-network benefits or the HSA. So I highly encourage you to like call in and I can give you the procedural codes and everything because so many people have found out like, oh, I actually do have this and I didn't even know. So more than happy to help you.
Yeah, maybe just to add to that is since this is oftentimes the season that people start thinking about their new coverage for the new year, it's something to do a little bit of research about to see if the plan offers out-of-network benefits. Or a lot of people, when they call and say, oh, I should have signed up for that FSA card, which is flexible savings account. So this is definitely also a season to think about if you would be interested in using an out-of-network provider like ourselves to, you know, plan ahead and see if the plans that you have offer that option.
Thank you both. I also have a question. So I know it's like also, you know, 'tis the season of all the holidays, but then like when people approach, like me personally, when I approach the new year and I think of like that whole new you or new year, new me, like, I don't know if I'm like, that's healthy terminology, but I'm just trying to think of like, you know, for other people that maybe are thinking the same thing, like what would be like a healthier way to approach maybe changing different habits when the new year starts?
I'd be happy to take this one. One of the things that I'm a huge fan of and that I pass on to a lot of clients, and so this has been helpful personally and professionally, sort of coming out of positive psychology is sort of this idea of, well, what kind of person do I want to be? What are the values that I want to live by? And then let me try to do that. And so many of the other things start to fall into place, right? If I want to be somebody who takes care of their body and be consistent and not give in to my, right, like my laziness or whatever, then by working out, I get to be all those things, right? And so it's so much more rewarding, right? You know, exciting to go like get to be that guy as opposed to like, oh, now I got to go to the garage and live, like, that's not fun. But being that guy is super exciting, right? And that guy can be, right? That can be thoroughness, which means like putting the paper towels on the paper towel dispenser, right? And like all the little things around the house that maybe, right, are hard for some people. So really, when you come back to the value, again, it's always, I think, much more exciting to work towards that value. Because then like even a thing that's tough, well, like you're tough for doing that thing, right? I call it the Rocky reframe, right? And I start to hum Rocky theme songs while I do the thing. But it turns this like chore into, oh, look at me, I'm the kind of person that does this. That's like, I feel good about myself now because only the best dads are changing diapers at, blown out diapers at 2:30 in the morning. Right. So it's just a nice way to sort of reframe having to do, things we have to do as opportunities to be the kind of person who does those things. And like, it's sort of a twofer. So that's the big one that I use.
No, totally. I agree with what Jeffrey said. And also, I think when we get into the arena of like New Year's resolutions, there's a lot of all or nothing thinking. Like either I have to start this new thing on January 1st, or like I'm never going to do it, or I never can do it. And I think we need to get out of kind of that all or nothing mentality sometimes, because there's, again, similar to what I said with the eating, like there's no one telling you can't start a new habit for your mental wellness on like a random Tuesday in April. Like, you can have this kind of mental philosophy all year long of, there's something new I want to try. There's something new that's going to, like Jeffrey said, bring me back to my values, bring me back to the person I want to be, or, bring me there in the first place. But I don't have to do it on January 1st, or else, I'm a failure for not doing it. And I think we need to, kind of remind ourselves of that sometimes, and, be gentle with ourselves about that kind of mentality.
Absolutely agree with both Jeffrey and Gab. And I think I wanted to jump in and just say, going back to when we were talking about setting realistic expectations of our holiday, if we have to break it down even that much, when you think about having to set goals for an entire year, a whole 365 days, I always give the analogy. It's like if you were to put a full plate of food in front of yourself and I said to you, eat this whole plate in one bite, how overwhelming that would feel. And that's really kind of what we do when it comes to New Year's. It's like, I'm going to go to the gym, X amount of days this year. And kind of like Gab, what you were saying, if we don't do that, then there's a lot of shame and guilt sometimes that gets put on us. So a nice way to kind of go about it is setting SMART goals. So they, we want our goals to be specific. We want them to be measurable. We want them to be achievable, relevant, and timely. So really, if I were to say, okay, now you can look at this plate of food and eat it at any pace that you want to by the end of the year, probably feels a lot easier. So really being able to break those goals down a little bit smaller. And I kind of like the idea of even starting to think about planning your goals ahead of time and trying to do them before January 1. Kind of like Gab was saying, like it doesn't have to necessarily need to be on New Year's Day. If you start a little bit ahead of time and start breaking it down and start working towards it, it gives this mentality of, oh, well, I already started this before the new year. So now this is, I'm trying to make it maybe more of a habit now that the new year has started. So a little bit of a reframe on it as well. It's a really good question.
I just read an article that says if you need to mow the lawn, but you don't want to, go out in your yard with headphones on and walk around for a while, and then just introduce the lawnmower. And so I think there's, with a lot of resolution type, right, with a lot of change, there's this rough draft warm up, right? And this is the studies show, right? Looking over an old homework assignment makes it easier to do the next homework assignment. So there's lots of tricks and tools to sort of like work one's mind into viewing that challenge a little bit differently too, I think.
I love that. I love that story. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing that and answering my question personally. Do we have any more questions coming in? I don't see any more Q&A. If anyone thinks of a question, definitely feel free to, contact us. We could always, if you call the health department here, I could send it to Gabrielle and Gabrielle can share it with everyone. Or if you call Lucan Center directly, I'm sure they can, answer your question. We do appreciate you all coming on tonight. And we thank, of course, Dr. Lucan, Gabrielle, Jessica, the other Gabrielle, and Jeffrey tonight, for having us. And Serby, do you want to pull up the slide real quick? Oh, also, I want to, if anyone else from the Lucan Center wants it, any last minute before we wrap up, feel free to take the floor.
We were just going to share our contact info as well, but we can do that at either before or after.
You could do it now. Go ahead.
Okay. I mean, I was just going to, here, I'll just pull up the. All right. So this is our contact info, website, phone number. And if you go to this our fancy little QR code that we're just learning how to use. It'll bring you to like our link tree so that you'll be able, and so from the link tree, you'll be able to get like to our social media or any other sort of like information about the practice, anything like that. So if you use that QR code, it'll basically bring you anywhere you need to go regarding anything related to the Lucan Center. But that's our contact info. That's how you can get in touch with us. And yeah, I don't know, Gabby or Dr. Lucan, if you wanted to add anything to that.
Just appreciate you you guys having us here, and just want to wish everybody a happy holiday. And just look out for some of our social media that we'll be just putting out, maybe some also suggestions or reminders that everybody can keep in mind during this holiday season.
Yes, and actually next week we will be doing another Instagram live on the 15th at 2 p.m. So if you want to tune in, we'll be there too on our own Instagram as well. And just the last reminder to be kind to yourself, right? Yeah, happy holidays. And there we go.
Okay, then. Well, then I just want to say thank you to everyone who came to tonight's presentation. We'd also like to thank everyone from the Lucan Center for being here tonight and giving us some wonderful tips on how we can all get through this holiday season. As a reminder, this presentation was recorded and will be available for further viewing on our social media and Village of Ridgewood webpage. I also am going to share a little slide here. Give me a moment. Okay, I think that should do it. Okay, so I just wanted to share a little bit of information about our Ridgewood Health Department. Please note that if you or someone you know is in need of assistance, whether it's for communicable disease information or social support resources and information, please feel free to contact us at the health department. Both my and Danielle's contact information is up on the screen. And then also, I just wanted to share a little other reminder about how we are seeing an increase currently in respiratory illnesses, including flu, RSV, COVID-19, common cold, and other seasonal viruses. Keep in mind that as you go through the holiday season, there are some things that you can do to protect yourself and protect others. Stay up to date with your vaccines and boosters. Stay home if you are sick and contact your healthcare provider. Avoid contact with people who are sick. Wash and sanitize your hands frequently. Clean commonly touched surfaces and objects, and also please cover your nose or mouth when sneezing or coughing. So just a little bit of, information there about what we can do to keep our bodies also healthy during this holiday season. So without taking more time up this evening, again, a big thank you to everyone at the Lucan Center and all of you at home who are joining us here tonight. Thank you so much for coming. We wish you all a very happy holiday season and have a great night.
Thank you all. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.